rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilman Alvarez.
Here.
Councilwoman Eckhart. Here. Councilman Larker.
Here.
Councilman Ward.
Here.
Supervisor Hay.
Here. Notations of the exits in the front and the rear and the electronic device, please put it on vibrate. I make a motion to come out of the executive session. No action was taken.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First item on the agenda in the work session, make a motion to go into work session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Longview School. Peter, I had a whole bunch of pictures I took and gave them to the board early on. Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Peter Scott. I'm an architect and engineer.
Oh, yeah, behind you.
If you want, you
representing
can
the
take it,
project.
Peter, you can pull it up. Oh, you know what? Did you
That's
put it
fine.
on?
Yeah.
They were at the first step. They were at the step.
Yeah.
Hey guys, is it okay if you turn the easel towards me though, since they have handouts? Yeah, you want to move that forward where it was?
Of this.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. You can leave it that way. I think we can see. Thanks.
So I'm before you tonight to talk about 188 Joes Hill Road. It's a 14-acre parcel in which there is a large unfinished dwelling. It's been sitting there for at least 15 years. And we're before you to discuss the potential of turning it into a school. With me is Mark Jacobs, Longview School, and maybe we could first introduce the school to you. They are on Main Street in Brewster, and they'd like to stay in the area. So with all that, introduce Mark Jacobs.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Mark Jacobs. I'm the director and co-founder of Longview School. With me is Carolyn Trott, who's the assistant director of Longview School. I started Longview School with my mother in 2001. We spent 9 years in Cortlandt Manor renting, and then we moved to Brewster when a local small private school, Crossroads School, closed. We came not to their building or not to be involved directly with their school, but to provide a place both for our students from Cortlandt Manor area and their students since they were closing their school. So we've been in Brewster for about 9 years, renting from the First United Methodist Church right on Main Street, the big white church right by the library. Our school is unique in that it provides something that's very hard to find. We're a very small school. We have 30 kids total in a K through 12 educational program. And with the proposed idea of moving to a building that we would buy on our own, we're not proposing a very big expansion in terms of the number of kids. We'd still think we would be between 30 and 40 kids, even with the move. And that's part of the specialty of what we have to offer, which is a very small, personalized environment that works with kids who are a combination, I'd say a third to half of our kids are special needs, and then a half to two-thirds of our kids are much more traditional learners, mixing in some accelerated learners as well. We have always been dedicated to the idea that a private school education should not just be available to people who are wealthy. So we've had a policy of not turning people away from inability to pay. We've been able to do that by involving parents in a barter system so that they could help out with the school, and by hiring dedicated people in keeping our expenses low so that we would be able to provide an excellent education to kids at a very affordable price. Some of the specialty of what we do is get kids involved from a very young age in having some say and direction in their education. And we're really teaching citizenship and government in a way that is rarely done in schools. We're a democratic school, not Democrat versus Republican, but democratic in the sense that kids are involved in the making of the rules, the enforcing of the rules, and in all of the work of running the school, not like child labor, but like they're helping to pay the bills, fix things when they're broken, help with general upkeep. Of course, we have someone come in and really keep the school clean, but you're teaching the kids sort of responsibility for their environment, for their community at a very young age. We mix all of this with, because our classes are so small, they range in size from 2 to 8 kids, we're able to use pedagogical techniques that would be very hard to be used in the public schools. We're able to use a lot more hands-on education, inquiry-based education, where kids are really challenged to be thinking in the learning of the material and not just being lectured to by teachers. And they're able to be involved in what interests them. We're able to focus on what's most relevant to them as individuals and as learners. We've been in buildings that we've rented for the 18 years of our time, just 2 buildings over that time, and half of that time here in Brewster, and in the village of Brewster, within the town of Southeast. We would very much like to stay in Brewster. We feel like we've been very positive, strong members of that community. We've done very well with the church, with the town, with the surrounding village, and to us, we would like to continue there. And this project, I think, really excites us as a possibility for our being able to do it. We've looked at lots of properties over the last year and a half within Brewster, and it can be very difficult to find properties that can meet the special permit uses that would allow for a school in a residential property. And this property has some really unique characteristics that make it, I would say, more fitting than any other piece of property that we've looked at in the past. I'm going to just briefly turn it over to...
Can you tell us what the characteristics are?
Yeah, first of all...
As long as one of them explains the
I
characteristics.
can do that if I could. It's important first if we could just talk about
Okay.
one program, which is...
Close to the mic, sir.
We'd like to talk about a couple programs which are indicative of this property, very quickly.
I'm the assistant director of Longview School and the head of the elementary. My name is Carolyn Trott. And our youngest students, our program that we want to put in place is a forest school. That means that children have the ability to be outside and using the outside as a learning environment. And that is something we cannot really provide right now while we're renting. And this property would really fit with this curriculum of creating gardens and really getting children involved in environmental activities outside, how to preserve environment, and that's why this property would really work for this program.
Again, Peter Scott. We've looked at a lot of different properties, and what's exciting about this project is as follows. It's 14.75 acres. It has a building of about 5,200 square foot, which needs interior removal. It's basically been sitting vacant for 20 years plus. The shell is good, but the interior has to be gutted, which is what we want to do for any building we get involved with. We have to make conversions to a school environment. The overall topography of the project is that we're on the high point of the project itself, which is on the south side, but lower on the property there's a wetland area, there's an upland area, and there's a forested area which we would be putting trails through. In terms of the building itself, there's a 800 square foot garage, A future plan would be to add a 5,000 square foot building, which you've depicted on the site plan, which would be within the 100, which would be outside of the 100-foot buffer as necessary for a school in the R160 zone. And that would be the limit of improvements beyond that of a driveway and some limited parking areas. The school was permitted in the R160 by a special permit by the town board, and that particular permit has to address a couple things. Coverage, we're way under. The description of the property meets all the criteria. The one item we would need a minor area variance on would be that of a side yard setback to the south. 100 foot's required. We're at 58 feet on one corner of the building and like 65 on the other. So any improvements we did to the building, that is, any additions, would be beyond the 100 foot. But the building currently, as it sits, is on the property, is close to the property line. It would need a variance for approval. Enhancements would be landscaping buffers. We do driveway improvements at the entrance because it is the apex of a hill. Joe's Hill Road has a summit where we're located, but we have plans on how to improve the driveway access and the sight distance on the roadway. Again, septic system is large enough for our capacity. It's a 5-bedroom septic with a capacity to be expanded to 7 bedrooms. It meets all that criteria. The well is more than adequate. And so we envision utilizing the shell. The building would not change on the exterior vernacular whatsoever. In fact, we like the look of it. It has that sort of Hogsworth kind of look to it. It's currently clad with a cedar exterior siding. On the interior of it, we'd be adding an elevator, an open elevator for 2 stories, and that would suffice both access to a basement area and to an upper layer. And because the building has been basically, any interior elements of significance are long gone because there's no front door. There hasn't been a front door on the building for 20 plus years. So basically, we would just remove the remnants of the sheetrock and then reinstall a fireproof sheetrock interior with minor amendments. But it would suffice perfectly for the classrooms, and the size of the rooms are of sufficient size to meet their needs. And the future phase of an outdoor gymnasium, we'd lower the gymnasium on the site so that it would be below the roof elevation of the existing garage. It'd be tucked in on the southern side of the property where there's 1,500 feet of forest to remain. And it would just be nestled up in that one area, again, with the trails, et cetera. So it meets the needs. Zoning we need a variance, but everything else meets the criteria of over 10 acres. And we can actually minimize our disturbances to a very small area and still meet all the needs of the project itself, thus keeping all the rest of the space as open space. And we could put conservations on that portion of the land to maintain its open space criteria for perpetuity. We would not expand beyond a footprint. And that's pretty much it. If I can answer any questions.
Maybe I make a comment.
Go ahead.
Sure. Just a couple things that I might have missed. First of all, Longview School is a recognized not-for-profit 501c3 organization. We would not be changing that. We're recognized by the New York State Department of Education. They are involved with the charter for us. We're not a charter school, that's a different category, but they issue a charter. And we're also serving a population of many school districts. We are not predominantly drawing from the town of Brewster. We do have a few kids, a handful of kids who come from the town of Brewster, but they're coming from a lot of the surrounding areas. And we have a very good relationship with the departments, the special education departments of all of the surrounding communities. There are some schools who are in a position like ours who draw from that population who tend to be in conflict with the local school districts, and we're not that way at all. They come, they visit kids in our school, we participate in their IEP process for kids with special needs. Everything is very collaborative with each other. But now I can throw it open to questions, but I just wanted to comment on that. Thank you.
Edwin, you want to start?
Just if I missed it, I'm not sure, the 5,000 square feet additional space, is that the actual gymnasium, or it's 5,000 square feet of an additional building plus the gymnasium?
That's a gymnasium, period.
Okay. Enclosed, or?
It'd be enclosed, it'd be a open space, clear span building, providing multiple uses. It would have a theater in it, and it would also be usable as a gymnasium.
Can I piggyback on that one question?
Yeah, of course.
You said outdoor gymnasium, what does that mean?
No, I'm saying it's an enclosed building.
No, but early on, I heard the word outdoor gymnasium.
Well, what we're saying is it's an addition of a gymnasium, not within the confines of the building. We're adding a gymnasium to the site. It's nothing outdoor. It's just a enclosed building.
Okay,
Would it be attached?
Actually, the intent would be the garage and the gymnasium would share a common wall, and the garage has access from the building itself already. It has an existing walkway covered, which connects that to the main building. So it's a natural just to tuck the gymnasium into the back of the garage.
Cool, thanks.
Will the gymnasium impede, would it be on the ridge line in any way?
We'd install the gymnasium so that the ridge of the gymnasium would be lower than the ridge of the garage. So we'd be basically below the elevation of the garage.
Okay. And you said that the school wasn't going to, would expand possibly to 40 students? Because what I always feel badly doing is, I would think this is something we would really want to limit because of traffic. So that would be something that you could live with for a long time?
Yes, absolutely. Our model relies upon the fact that we provide a small school environment that has somewhat of a family feel to it. That's part of the reason to buy a house and not buy a commercial building. And one of the things that makes this particular property ideal is that it is a big house, but we would be using it as a shell. So we would be able to have both meeting all of the requirements for building code for the New York State Department of Education requirements for a building, and at the same time be able to keep sort of a house feel, which is like a community feel rather than an institutional feel, which is one of the populations we serve. A lot of kids who come to us have a lot of anxiety in a big school building
Right.
with a lot of people around. So yes, and so in answer to your question, clearly, absolutely, yes, we'd like to keep it small.
Okay. And I'm a big fan of small schools because I think there's a real place for them. Traditional school day,
Yes.
much going on the weekends or nothing in general?
Up till now, we've had almost nothing going on in the weekends and almost nothing going on in the evening. We may have a little bit, but we don't intend to expand that considerably.
Okay. And you mentioned that you're accredited by New York State Board of Education Department.
Yeah, New York State Board of Education has sort of different categories.
Right.
What we've applied for is a charter
Right.
to operate, and they've given us a charter to operate. What we haven't applied for is becoming a registered high school, because a registered high school is required to follow the New York State Regents curriculum and testing. So we want to be recognized by the state, but we don't want to follow the same testing requirements. We believe that the education we provide is better than, in a certain way better because we're smaller. One of the main purposes of testing is to be able to have teachers be able to see where students are, how much they're learning. That's very different in a class of 25 to 30 versus a class of 2 to 8. So we don't need that as much.
Right.
So we're not looking to become a registered high school, but we would continue, of course.
And do you have any memberships or affiliations with any other private schools? Because I know there are different, it's not really an accreditation, or some of them do.
Right, right. Now,
How does that work?
we're part of two networks. We were one of the founding members of the Northeast Association of Democratic Schools, and we're part of the Arrow network of alternative schools. Neither of those are accreditations, but they're connections with other schools in the United States.
Okay. And last question, sorry to keep you, but will this school be required to have a sprinkler system by being a school, or how does that work?
The way we are establishing it at this point in time is we would have fire areas separation versus out of a sprinkler system. We've already talked to state education, and there is a criteria which would apply to this building itself.
With that, is that because of number of students or the area of the school? How is that determined?
Area and number of students.
Okay. All right. That's it for now. Thank you.
John?
Traditional school year?
Yes.
Okay, so you'd be closed for the summer, or there would be no educational activities going on during the summer?
Not initially, but it is possible that we would have, again, not overnight, but similar school day sort of programs to help support the building in the summer. But it would still conform to the normal day school time frame. So we would be predominantly inhabiting the building during the time people in the community would be out at work, and then we would be gone and empty by the time they're coming home from work.
Do you have nighttime activities at your school in Brewster?
Hardly ever. We may add just a few, but it has never been a big part of our program.
And would you envision like renting your school to organizations that might want to meet there at night?
I don't think so. That wasn't at all part of the plan. We certainly have a budget which has us clearly being able to cover all the expenses for it. So that is not part of the plan.
Could I just follow up on one question?
Please do.
When John asked, which I thought was a great question about in summer, is that something, would that be under your purview, or would it become a camp of any sort? Or I just wanted to clarify, I wasn't too clear.
It would be under our purview. I'm not sure if we would call it a camp, but probably much more educational based. So one of the specialty areas we have right now is with STEM, and we would probably be advancing that in terms of programs that would involve, say, computer programming, electronics, media, all things that would sort of fit within that.
Would it be your same student body? Would it increase the student body, or a different student body?
I think it would draw from both our current student body and people on the outside, but it wouldn't increase in size. I just think that...
It would still be limited to 30 to 40 students?
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Sorry, John. Thanks.
And the ages of these students, what's the youngest, what's the oldest?
We currently have kids 7 through 19, and we would generally have kids 5 through 19.
And do any of the students drive to the school itself, or would you envision that happening?
That's possible for things like high school seniors, but say out of our 30 kids on an annual basis, you're talking about 1 or 2 kids who's able to drive on their own. So it's not adding significant flow of kids driving.
Thank you.
Herb?
So if I understood the presentation in the beginning, you don't currently receive any funding from the school tax base in this town?
That is true. I do want to be clear, though, a handful of our kids are paid for by local school districts. Brewster has not, up till this time, been one of them, and that only happens in a very particular circumstance, because we're not trying to draw from that base, so we're not on, nor do we intend to be put on, say, the New York State approved schools list for special education placement. Again, that would have us doing testing and assessment that we're not supportive of for our population and size. But there is a particular situation when a student has, a school district has been unable to find a suitable placement for a particular child after numerous tries. And when that happens, there is law that supports parental placement in a private school not on any list. So typically we have 1 to 3 kids out of our 30 kids who is paid for through reimbursement to a local school district, up till now never having been Brewster.
Okay. Have you had any discussions with the neighbors up there?
Not yet.
Okay. And I don't know if this isn't a question, but just a comment, that road it's a gnarly road. That's it.
Could I ask one?
One thing we thought about, if I may, is we thought about potentially limiting access from the south, from the north, not from the south. And in that manner, we would be running up through Federal Road direction versus from Route 6, because that's one way to mitigate the issues we have with the road. It's much worse to the south.
How would you do that, though?
Pardon me?
How would you limit that?
Oh, since it's an internally controlled project, and we've got people going there on a daily basis, we could put restrictions in place for both any sort of services or any sort of parents.
Okay.
Very quickly do that.
And do you have used school buses or not on this?
Yeah, public schools are required to bus to private schools within a 15-mile radius. So we do have some buses that come. So we typically have those smaller yellow school buses, usually from about 3 to 4 school districts. So you're having 3 to 4 buses come on a daily basis.
Thank you.
And just to address it, yeah, we have a plan to enhance the entrance and everything else, sight distance-wise, to make it viable. We've already reviewed all the turning radius. So there's improvements, because all there is right now that's serving the house is a trail that was cut through the wood during construction, which has grown inward. We would enhance that, of course.
Okay, my question is going to be all over the place because as you were speaking, I wrote down notes. The number of employees, how many teachers, and you require a nurse there?
We are not required to have a nurse.
Okay, how many employees approximately?
We have about 7 employees, and then probably on a daily basis, 3 volunteers.
Okay, so that's 10 vehicles. How many parking spaces are you proposing on the site?
Well, we've worked in other schools in the past, and basically we provide a number of spaces for all the employees, plus 50% for people who may be visiting, because most of it's drop-off. And so accordingly, I have a plan which shows about 18 spaces. 18? Yeah, there's plenty of room for expansion, though, because there is a huge courtyard in this project that is unutilized, but we have parking proposed in a linear nature adjacent to the building. And we picked that number from historical records and other projects we've worked on.
Will the building have any kind of a cafeteria, any kind of food service?
It's somewhat limited by the health department. It's almost like bring your own lunches, but you can have something for the teachers. The students, we can't cook there, but we can have food there.
So you couldn't have a kitchen and cook?
It'd be cooking, but it has to be limited in some manner.
You don't have to put in a commercial
Can I just
kitchen?
quickly address that? We're not going to be providing meals to kids, but one of the elective classes we offer is a cooking class, so we would have a kitchen for that, but that's used twice a week for the cooking period, and then for kids who bring their own food, like a microwave or a toaster to heat things up. So we're not preparing meals, and we're not giving like a hot lunch or breakfast for that. We require that be brought in.
Okay, not knowing the health department code, you're saying it's 7 bedrooms. What does that equate to kids in the school?
Well, the septic system was designed with the old ordinances. That's like 2,100 gallons a day capacity. And if you divide it through by 15 gallons per day per child, we've got more than enough at capacity.
Okay. Not just children, but adults as well, right?
Yes, the health department would have to get a permit on this, and it would be based upon employees, children, and there's specific ordinances we have to follow. Our septic would meet the capacity requirements.
Now, you mentioned with various school districts. I don't know what the number is. Now, if you had like 1 bus, how many school districts participate currently, and how many do you expect to participate?
How many are busing?
Well,
because we participate, we'll have kids from many school districts, but many of our families don't request busing from those school districts. So that's why we only tend to have 3 or 4 buses maximum in a year. I don't think we've ever had more than 4 of the small buses that came to the school each day.
Okay. Just a couple more, let's see. Approximately how long from the time, if you purchase the building to renovation costs, how long is that going to take you?
Well, it's in 2 phases. Phase 1 is renovating the building and correcting the entrance driveway. It's about a year for that. The gymnasium would be a second phase, and we'd prep for it, but we wouldn't build it for at least another year. So probably a 2-year full build out, 2.5 years.
And to touch on what Eric said, there's really 2 houses that would be somewhat affected. Directly across the street, there's a very nice house with, flat, modern-looking building. And then Renwood, right above the hill there's a house that's very visible. Now, of course, it's now wintertime and very visible, but once the leaf comes on the trees, it would help block any kind of noise.
We would put evergreens on the southern border. On the
Which way is, tell me which way is south?
south is if you look at the driveways to the right.
You're going toward Route 6?
It's going
Yes.
to Route 6,
Okay.
yes. That would be considered south.
Now,
So-
where are you going to put them? Where would you put them?
Well, our building would, we would put evergreens on the southern border, and that would buffer the people on the, if you look at the driveway, to the right side of it,
Okay.
where
now,
we're closest.
Renwood is the closest, Renwood appears to be the closest one. As you look up the hill, it's pretty
It'd be
visible.
on his side. It'd be
Okay.
that direction.
Okay, good.
And then on the other side of it, the future school would be set down lower or equal in height to the garage, and accordingly, it would be not visible because the garage would block it from the south. And from the northern side, we're above the adjacent roadway and any adjacent house by heights of 100 feet plus. So we're on a high plateau looking over a vast array of trees to the north.
And when do you plan to come to the town board for an actual site plan approval? Well, I know you have to go through site plan approval through the town,
Right.
but we have to issue a special permit.
Yes.
And one thing I think is always asked backwards is they would seeker, we're the last ones in the mix, and, you don't want to go through the whole process and be told no. So how does that work?
Well, a couple ways you can do it. The town board can become lead agent in the SECA process, and then we go through you and be referred to planning for recommendations. I've done it in other towns. The other option is go through planning, get a negative deck, and then come to you at that point in time after we've received a negative deck. There aren't many impacts with the project in terms of environmental, except for a driveway, some stormwater management, and erosion control, because again, we're keeping the shell pretty much intact. We're working within a shell. The garage would be a second, the gym would be a second phase, but that would be all encompassed in the initial site plan review. Also, during the initial process of the project, we'd get something from the health department on a feasibility approval of the septic system. They're willing to do that. And it's just a mathematics proving our future use is covered by the approved use of that of a house.
Okay. Anyone else?
Is the gymnasium a deal breaker for you? Let's just say you start going through the planning board process, site approval, secret, the whole nine, and for whatever reason, it's like you're not getting a gymnasium. Is that a deal breaker for you, or?
Well, what I'd probably do, in worst case, is I'd go into the garage and take the garage away and then replace some of the area of the garage with this building. Because we already have a garage, which is about 800, 900 square feet. So again, a significant portion of this structure could be eliminated, could be placed in the garage. Again, our coverages are under 4% coverage because we have 14 acres. We're only working in a tiny, small area of it. With proper mitigation, aesthetic design of the exterior of the potential building that we're proposing, it would be more of a aesthetic versus a planning issue, I think, because it's such an insignificant component as a big picture.
And just Supervisor Hay asked about 7 bedrooms, and you actually answered then the question in regards to septic, but I think what he was getting at, and I'm just curious myself, is the equivalent of a 7-bedroom house, then what does that equate to in like classrooms? I take it you're converting the bedrooms, you know, in
Pretty
theory,
much.
to be like a classroom size or whatever. So I think that's what he was getting at, if you can just,
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at probably 6 or 7 classrooms. There's potential to put some workshops in the garage if that remains. So we have a big palette to work with. In fact, even the basement is available, and that has windows in it for egress. It's just unfinished. But when they built this house, they did a couple interesting things. The ceilings are like 10-foot floor to floor, clear. So we have really high ceilings. We have 2 staircases in the building extending throughout, and it helps us with egress, accessibility, and we have a big open foyer which works great for putting an elevator in, servicing the basement and the main floor and the upper floor. So we have a lot of opportunities, and in addition, there's no interior left because vandals have destroyed all the interior. So we basically have a clean slate to create a brand new building versus working with an old building where you have to spend all that time, trying to work with what you have. We have a shell. We've got a lot of square footage, so we can make it work. It's ideal for this conversion.
thank you.
So you will be handicap accessible?
It's required, yes.
It's required. And 18 spaces, do you have, I mean, if you have programs or art shows or concerts or any kind of theater at all, that doesn't seem like it would be adequate to me. I know the planning board will address all this, but I'm just putting it out there now. Any
Yeah, what I
answers?
have is I have a long roadway entering into the site. And in a lot of cases where we have periodic use, we'll put in a grassed parking area, which is reinforced for
Right.
vehicular parking. And we're going to land bank some parking spaces, which are invisible most of the time. It looks like a lawn,
Right.
but they'll be reinforced to park cars on it as overflow. And also, we have this courtyard area which exists, which we're not utilizing for vehicles, but we have lots of room in there as well. The way the house was designed initially is it wrapped around a large courtyard on the south side, and that's how you got into all these garage spaces.
Right.
There was even a fountain proposed in the middle of this huge courtyard. And so basically, that area remains as initially designed, and we can even put vehicles in overflow conditions in that area as well.
So to be clear then, how many, I understand you could use Grasscrete and things,
Yes.
I get all that, which is great, but so overall, how many cars do you think you will want to accommodate or be able to accommodate without parking kind of willy-nilly all over the place?
I can put 20 plus, whatever methodology we look at in terms of establishing enough parking, we can easily provide it. I could put 30 cars on the space, but I only want to put about 18 on pavement,
No,
and the
no,
rest would
and-
be overflow.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's the case. And my last concern would be a little bit, I understand, and I think it's fantastic if you're going to get kids outside, but noise really, which Supervisor Hay brought up, that can be really a big, big deal. I know if you've ever lived next to children, that it is. So is it real classroom kind of set out? How is the outdoors? Is there going to be a lot of playtime outdoors, which is great, but I mean, how do you regulate that?
Right. We expect to have a small playground area in that courtyard, but also like a lot of what Carolyn addressed in terms of like a nature-type school is the usage of the hiking trails
Right.
that are already on the property. So it's not like they're going to we'll have big classes out there. And this is predominantly for the elementary school. In the middle school, high school, by that point, we're more focused on indoor education and in the classrooms. So it's out of 35 or 40 kids, you may have 10 to 15 who are outside, often on the hiking trails, doing something science-related, nature-related, and then, being on the playground once or twice a day.
One thing to clarify, because we have to meet the school criteria, the trails, which are part and parcel of the school use, have to be 100 feet from the property line. So our trail system would be set back. And we've got extensive land to do it with on the property itself. So you're not going to be, no one's going to be walking along the edge of this property. It'll be restrained and controlled within outside the required 100-foot buffer.
One, you have any more?
I have one more question. Will anyone be living there?
No.
And just one last question. The front of the building, currently where there's no door supposedly, okay? Is that going to be the entranceway for the school itself? In the
The entrance is from the courtyard. That's not,
In the front or the back?
that's the back.
You're going to go to the back?
You go to the back, yes.
So what's going to happen in the front?
It's an egress door only. It's
Okay,
not
so
open.
you don't have to put any retaining walls for parking because it's pretty steep here in the front.
Yeah, we're parking to the right side, and you walk into the courtyard and enter from the rear of the building.
Now, the weird thing is when you go to the back, you have a heavy rock crop on the right-hand side of the building. I mean, I had a little Honda Fit and it barely fit through it.
Yes.
And you got a bus. I guess you're going to be blasting a little?
No, on the plan, we're showing a loop. There's a loop right up against where the building is. You come in, there's a loop, and to the right-hand side, there's parking spaces. We have a loop that we looked at it carefully. We can make a loop work right near the building. You don't go into the courtyard itself to do the loop. It's right outside that courtyard. We can fit it. So it goes from the right property line to, it'll fit within that confine.
Yeah, because right here at the very back of the house, there's rock cropping.
Yeah.
I didn't measure it, but it's.
That's only for, when you park the car outside of that courtyard, and you walk into the front door.
So if the kids come up in a bus?
Yes.
Where do they get out here? And
Yes,
walk
and they
to the
walk,
back?
they walk through that courtyard area.
And how does the bus turn around?
A circle, which is outside
In the
that
front?
loop. It's a circle in front, but it's a circle right at the edge of where the building is.
And you can do that without a retaining wall?
Yes. Well, it's a cut and fill. There might be a slight retaining wall, but nothing excessive.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, you said 1 year to get the driveway done, and then a second year, I guess, to start working on the gymnasium. Will you be looking to occupy after the first year?
Oh, yes. Whenever we do a phase, we have to do phases for SECA, for
Okay.
segmentation purposes. So we have to show you full build-out for evaluate an EAF.
Okay.
So we're going to show the phase, and again, the necessity is to get it up and operating without a gymnasium. And that allows everyone to get a feel for how it functions, how it works, and we can always work something out in terms of conditions to move on to the next phase if required.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second item on the agenda, Highway Superintendent.
Good evening, everyone.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Mike?
The major reason I'm here is to discuss the reason I presented a 284 agreement for this year back in January, and I haven't heard anything back from the town board as to why or whether it's been signed. I believe it has not, and that's my number one question tonight, what your intentions are with that 284 agreement, which obviously is to approve the expenditures of highway funds for the operation of the highway department.
Who wants to go first? Go.
Okay, do you want to address that, though, for us, of
As far as?
what you want to see done with the 284 agreement?
Well, the
What we all wanna
284,
see done.
I personally believe it should be modified somewhat, especially with the cost. It shows right now $1.4 million and general repair of 88.46 miles of roadway. The proposal in front of us shows, okay, here we go.
I can barely hear you.
The proposal, the 284 you put in front of the board prior to this was $1.4 million. You identified $381,000 of road repairs. So I'd ask that to be scaled back to approximately $400,000 and thereabouts, and if you need additional monies, we could add it later on. You identified 88.46 miles of roads, and you've only identified 8 miles, 10% of that to be done. So why would we have such a discrepancy between how much you're asking for and how much you're planning to spend according to the document you provided?
There isn't a discrepancy. The amounts that I've asked for you to approve are already the amounts that were funded to my department for annual expenses. Annual expenses range anything from purchasing light bulbs to salaries to pipe and gravel road repairs. There's hundreds of different things that we do. We do tree work to remove dead trees from the roadways. It's all part of that allocated funds for the years. And generally speaking, it would be impossible to earmark each and every dollar that was to be spent in past years or in upcoming years. Typically, all you've asked for in the past were the roads that were to be paved, and I was told by this board a couple of years ago that the only thing that 284 agreement was for the disbursement of CHIPS funds. And I believe I disagreed with that at the time, and I hopefully the board has had some opportunity to research that, and it's the purpose of the 284 agreement is to fund my department and have the approval of this board to disperse the funds that are in my budget.
Well, I believe, and I'd have to check with the town accountant, the 1.4, I took that to be the amount of monies that you have in your road repair line and CHIPS line. And if it's not, and you're talking about tree repair work and things of that nature, I think whatever you're proposing to see that there's nothing else in there, because again, $1.4 million as opposed to, and showing 88 miles of roadway, that's what the 284 is we're more interested in the roads. The tree repair and things you do of that nature, if a tree falls down, you gotta fix it. So I'd want that more clarified before I commit to an amount of money for that particular line. One of the things we asked as well, I mean, at least with this latest one, there's been a lot of complaints about the proposed type of usage of the material, the chip seal. I don't believe we received any positive comments from any neighborhood that had that put in. And basically, is chip seal the only thing we're doing? And if not, there's something called polymer. We asked a question as well about possibly is the town, I mean, we're gonna go out to bid on, not to bid, but a contractor's gonna do it. Could the town itself not do that instead of that? In other words, give us some ideas of what the actual costs are if we were to do it ourselves, other types of materials that can be used.
If we were to do chip sealing ourselves?
No, not chip sealing, paving. I mean, a lot of people, again, I don't know if anyone received a positive comment about chip seal. We've had numerous roads that were
Well,
done.
then maybe you didn't speak to the right people, because
We talked to the
I spoke to an individual this morning who brought it to my attention that he thought it was one of the greatest things we had done in a long time. And it was between chip sealing, the difference in opinion of chip seal, which, to be honest with you, we've never really done chip seal in this town. We've done a process that's called fiber matting, which is a chip seal that has fiberglass mesh embedded in between two layers of liquid asphalt that actually holds the structure of the roads together, and it's a far superior method than just straight chip seal, which is a extremely good process for certain roadways, ones that haven't deteriorated to a point that they're going to buckle and fall apart. The fiberglass holds them together. The chip seal is essentially an oil that seals out the moisture and a stone layer on top that gives you an extremely good traction and wear surface. There are dozens of different possibilities for road treatments, up to and including blacktop caps over existing roads. The unfortunate problem is that right now, we don't have many roads that are candidates for blacktop caps. And where we do, typically a black top cap would go over a roadway that has a very stable base and that needs shimming of the wheel slots, and you put a DOT standard is 1.5 inches, 2 inches of blacktop rolled to 1.5 inches, and they put a new wear surface on that will last on roads that aren't alligator or that have substandard bases. Most of our roads were built on cow pastures, and they were very rarely ever excavated and built to DOT standards. So the reason why I advocate the fiber mat or the chip seal is it seals out the moisture, it gives you a new wear surface, and the problems that we had, and I would agree, and I would be very hesitant to use it in certain circumstances, which are in developments where they have cul-de-sacs. The long, straight roads wear very well, and it's the perfect treatment for that. When you get in a cul-de-sac where school buses in the summertime when the road temperatures are hot, or garbage trucks, they make tight turns in the cul-de-sacs, they can mark the surface of the essentially oil and stone surface. We did some last year that we did the straight portions of the developments, and we did not do the cul-de-sacs for that reason. So we kept them aesthetically in much better condition. There's other processes that I would use in those developments now. There's a variety of microsurfacings and things that adhere better to the road. They don't scuff, and not even blacktop in that area. Just as a matter of factly, I put a couple numbers together. These would be for an average of a 20-foot wide road. Some of our roads in town range anywhere from 16 feet up to about 32 feet. But our average road is around 20, some 22, some 18, but I would, just for a matter of purpose, I'm going to make all these roads are going to be a mile long and 20 feet wide. And these are cost comparisons. To chip seal a road costs about $29,500 per mile. To fiber mat a road costs around $38,000. And the benefit is what I said it was before. It structurally rebuilds and holds the road together. It just doesn't seal out the moisture. To put a two-inch cap, which is 2 inches of asphalt that's rolled to 1.5 inches, roughly $150,000 a mile. To do micro surfacing, which is another process, it's essentially a industrial grade sealer with aggregate mixed in. It's put on in hot. We did this in developments last year. I did it in Indian Well. I did it in on Morning Dove. The people were thrilled with the process, and it essentially extended the life of that road probably 10 to 15 years. The cost of that process is $47,000 a mile.
Well, I recall the two roads you just mentioned, which is Indian Wells. I remember the email chain. I don't think there was one neighbor didn't come in and not speak positively. They did not speak positively. Scenic Ridge, the numerous emails.
Yeah, because they all thought that we were doing chip seal in there, and they were outraged by it. It had nothing to do with the process that we did. After we did this process, I had the vast majority of the members of the residents in there tell me they thought that it was terrific and that they had no idea it would turn out that well. So I think we have different sources of information. Even the one that was the one that was difficult was Maplewood North. A couple years ago, we did do fiber mat in there, and it's holding up extremely well. And at this point, people said it looked horrible, but it looks like blacktop. You wouldn't know the difference from that and any other blacktop surface today. It took a little while, but most of the residents in there concurred that that process worked pretty well. It's the same process that you and I went out and looked at on 2 different occasions, and you were so thrilled with it, you wanted to
Don't
do...
speak for me, Mr. Bruin, please.
I can speak for
No,
you
you
because...
cannot.
I most certainly can,
You
because
cannot.
you said you wanted to do the town hall parking lot with it, that same process. I can speak for you because that
You cannot
was the
speak for
discussion
me,
that you and I
please.
had.
Okay, Lynn, you had an opportunity to ride some of these roads. What are your thoughts?
I went out today to,
I would like to just finish a couple
no,
more
no,
cost
that's fine.
comparisons before we went on a tangent, but
Mike,
the
what was the process that was $47,000 a mile?
microsurfacing.
I'm sorry, how
I
much?
didn't hear 40.
The last one.
The last,
Microsurfacing.
47, it was called microsurfacing.
And what
You've
was,
done that?
And that's essentially a industrial-grade hot polymer liquid that's put on the road with fine aggregate in it. It seals the road, and it gives an extremely high traction surface. It's called...
Have we done that anywhere in our town?
We have. We did that last year in Indian Well and Morning Dove. We also did it on Old Milltown Road, Welfare Road, Farrell Drive, and possibly maybe one other small road, but those were the ones that we did last year.
Mike, could you just go back? The $38,000 per mile was which kind of,
That was the fiber mat.
that was fiber, and the $29,000 was chip seal?
That was chip seal, yes.
Okay, I've got it, thank you.
Mike, what'd you do Sherwood Hill with? Is it one of these?
Sherwood Hill was done in fiber mat. And I believe that was two years ago. And we do like it on hills because it's a very high traction surface in the wintertime. There are other possibilities for, there's one that's called a paver-placed surface treatment, which is essentially a layer of liquid asphalt, about a 3/4 to 1 inch layer of blacktop over the top, and it remains flexible. It seals the road. You have to make sure you have the right candidate for that. If the roads are very alligatored, it's going to, within a year or so, it'll mirror the the roadway that was there prior to the surface. But if you have a good roadway where you're concerned with the elevations, in other words, if we go and put 3 inches of blacktop over and we're higher than the curbs or we're higher than the catch basins, and we have to spend $100,000 in a development to raise the catch basins just to get a new wear surface, this is a very good candidate.
And what is that per mile? What is that per mile?
Roughly $76,000
And what
per
is it
mile.
called again?
That's called paver-placed surface treatment.
Okay, thank you.
And the last one I'd like to discuss, because we have used this before, and it's a very good process for roads that the top layer of the road are alligator to a point that there isn't much you can do with them other than either a full depth reclamation, which is you grind the entire surface and then you mitigate the base that may not be up to par. We may not have a foot of solid compact item 4 base, so you can restore the base, you grind the whole top and you take it away, and then you blacktop on top of that. That's called full depth reclamation. This last one is it's called a cold in place process, and we did it on Star Ridge
Mike.
Road about
How much
Yes.
was the full depth reclamation?
about $70,000 a mile to do the milling and the reclamation. That does not include the top treatment. So we'd have to go back to, you mill that out, then you put in
2-inch cap on top
3
of it?
inches of blacktop binder, and then 2 inches of top cap on top of that. It's a very expensive process, so you're looking at roughly $150,000 a mile for the top cap, and probably in the neighborhood, I'm just winging this, probably in the $200,000 a mile for the binder, the base course.
Okay.
And the last one, as I said, we used in Star Ridge probably about 4 or 5 years ago. The road was virtually shot. It was almost impassable. So what we did was we milled the top, and there's a machine that mills the blacktop down 3 inches. It reclaims it in the same machine. It adds admixes to it. It adds gravel, whatever. You pre-test the road to see what kind of aggregates are needed. So you can add aggregate, any size of gravel. You can add determined amount of polymers or petroleum product. Essentially, you're making cold in place blacktop. It's a base, a binder base, and it's all done in one process. It grinds it, it makes it, it rescreeds it down, they roll it, and you have a new sub base. You give that about 3 to 4 weeks to cure. You seal the top with what's called a fog seal, and you let it cure, and then you come back and you put your top cap, your wear course on before the end of the year, and that's what we did to Star Ridge. It's a little expensive, but I believe the first year I was here, I saved the CHIPS funds from that year to allocate enough for the 2 years to be able to do that road in its entirety. We did it from Route 84 all the way to the North Salem line, and it's holding up tremendously.
And what's the cost on that?
I didn't bring the actual cost for the whole road, but the cost for the in-place surface is about $70,000 a mile to do the in-place, and then you could add $150,000 a mile for the top cap. So you're looking at somewhere around $200,000, $220,000 a mile to perform that entire treatment.
What was that called again? What was that called again, Mike?
That's called cold in-place resurfacing. So I just want to give you some ideas of different options that there are, but where we stand right now is we last year shimmed Brewster Hill Road. Shimming is a process where we use a very fine blacktop. We seal the road with tack so that the blacktop will bond to the old surface. And we did this in preparation. What it does is we call wheel slots, where the trucks and cars ride typically in the road. They pack the road down. And we had roads that were, those wheel slots were 2+ inches deeper than the rest of the roadway. So when we plow them in the wintertime, the snow stays in those slots. And the only way you can get it out is by salting it and hoping that it evaporates, because if it doesn't, it just reforms ice at night. So I took over the last 5 years our worst roads, and we filled all the wheel slots with shim, and we used it on Sodom Road was very bad, but I did virtually the entire length of Brewster Hill last year in preparation for a treatment this year. The town board could decide, well, actually, you know, it's been said many, many times, and I'm happy to supply you with all this information, and I would like to have your thoughts on that, but I was hired to do this job, and it's been said many times by most people on this board that they don't make the decisions as to what the practices are in the highway department. The highway department, or the highway superintendent, makes those decisions. And my decision for that road would be to do fiber mat on it, seal the entire road. It rides very well the way it is. That was our intention last year when we did that process of shimming. And for $38,000 a mile, we can stretch our resurfacing almost triple to quadruple the amount of roads that we have been doing and will continue to do and keep our roads in good shape. If you want to, I'm happy to put that road in the condition it's in. When we put a blacktop cap on it, it's a very brittle surface. So any movement in the road, the fiber mat will adjust for the movements. It won't crack, it'll hold the road together. So we're not going to do an 1.5 inch cap on that if we do blacktop. I'm happy to blacktop it, but it's going to be a 3-inch cap compacted to 2.5 inches. That's the minimum amount that I would recommend doing on that road with the truck traffic to keep it in good order. So we would go from roughly $150,000 a mile to add half of that, so another $225,000 a mile for a 3-inch compacted to 2.5 inches. And while we're on the subject of, it's like someone did ask earlier about why we don't do more blacktopping of our own. We did about as much blacktop as we had time for. We don't have, our vehicles are not set to blacktop. We typically, the trucks that haul blacktop are set up so you can push them with the paver. Ours are not that. We have about 1 or 2 trucks that can be pushed by the paver. Our paver is essentially a driveway paver. It's not a highway paver. It's just not suitable for that job. It was designed to do driveways and small jobs. If I put a crew of 10 people out there hauling blacktop, burning fuel, laying blacktop, rolling it, flagging, and the whole process, I can hire a contractor, and it's proven it, for somewhere around, it's a little bit of an estimate, but it's about $6 a ton that they will haul it, place it with their own paver, a paver that can put out 2,000 ton a day, not 300-400 ton a day that we are limited to, and they roll it. We often, to keep costs down, we do flagging because we know our roads, and they don't have to add flaggers to their, so I always recommended that we use our own flaggers who are knowledgeable of our roads, and I find that the reason I use that process is it is absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt the most cost-effective way to pave roads. We at my highway department don't have enough time in any given year to make the repairs that are necessary. We have over 3,000 catch basins, most of them in need of repair, all of them in need of cleaning. We've got miles of corrugated metal pipe that it was installed 20, 30, 50 years ago that's rotted out, and it's collapsing all over town. We've got signs to replace. We in the wintertime do tree maintenance. If we did tree maintenance year-round, we could barely keep up with the dead, dying, and dangerous trees in town. Not one time has any one of my men or any group of my men ever sat in our shop for lack of something to do. Rainy days, snowy days, cold days, hot days, they are out working every single day doing beneficial things for this town. We will never, ever, ever catch up with the amount of work that we have on our dirt roads, on our paved roads, and I could use more men. I've been limited by head count, and I've stuck to that head count. We could use more. If you want to give me more trucks, give me a new paver, and that costs around $350,000 for a suitable paver. I guarantee you we can get more done. But to pave roads in department is ludicrous. The facts, the dollar and cents figures just prove that time and time again. That we couldn't buy almost the fuel for our day, no less our manpower. Our manpower is not free. Our men get paid extremely well. So whether they're doing blacktop and not doing basin repair, or not doing pipe repair, or cleaning sluices, or mowing the sides of the highways, the hundreds of sorted jobs that we do down there, from picking up litter, there's plenty for them to do other than it. Blacktop is not the job for them. It works out very well when we do, just one second, it works out very well, and I utilize them on smaller projects. We did Putnam Avenue last year in-house. It worked out very well, but small jobs like that are very difficult to get large contractors to do. They do charge a premium rate for smaller jobs like that, so I utilized my men. They did part of Friendly Road. They did a great job, but there's times for that. That's that little paver we have, and the small amount that we can put down on every day. It accommodates it very well.
Only thing I would ask if you could provide us as soon as possible, to identify how the $1.4 million you've identified here will be spent. You've identified, again, $381,000 in roads, and just identify what the other dollars is and provide it to us.
For exactly what it says, for general repairs.
Well, can you identify general, you mentioned a bunch of things. You said tree work, this, that, and everything else. Can you identify what that is?
General repairs? Pipe replacement, tree work, every single day that we send our men out. Part of that 1.4 million pays their salaries.
Did you do any of that last year?
I'm sorry?
Did you do any of what you just mentioned? Did you do any of that last year?
Any work last year?
No. Did you spend, all the things you just identified, tree work, pipe replacement, this, and this, did you do any of that last year?
Yes, we did.
And how much did it cost then? You know?
Our accounting department has every dime that was spent. As you know, you're the CFO of this town. You know
That's why I'm
that
asking
each...
the question.
You know that each and every penny that we spend gets earmarked by a number that designates, their DA number designates what line each of our expenditures comes out of. So if we purchase pipe, or if we purchase gravel, or if we purchase, each has a different number that it's assigned to the purchase of materials or to labor. It's all a matter of accounting. You can just pull that from our accountant, who can tell you where every dime was spent.
Can I make a suggestion? You are an elected official, and you are our highway superintendent, so we do look, you know, but we get complaints. I'm sure you get complaints about me. That's just how the world works. But I think what would be really helpful...
I can say I've never had one.
Well, that's very surprising, but maybe you and I could sit down. I think what we're looking for is a little more detail. Would that be fair to say to the board? We're looking for more detail. And I don't think we have to get into micro detail on this, but I think if we talk about what roads, what treatment, I think then we're doing due diligence as, you know, fiscal shepherds for the town, because we do send people to you if they do complain, and I think it would be really helpful for us to, maybe it's us, maybe we need a better understanding of everything, because we all know on this board how hard your highway department works, and I don't want anyone to think that that's what we're complaining about. But I think if you and I can sit down, because I'm a layman, and we can really do a little more detailed work, then we can get this signed and get you on your way to doing whatever it is you need to do. If that's agreeable to you, you know, I'm available, so.
I am certainly...
Or if you want to do it on your own.
I'm certainly all for, and I said in my email to this town board, to explaining what we do down there and why. But at some point, a difficult decision has to be made. I had a person ask me the other day when we were doing tree work in a local neighborhood, don't you ask the residents their permission to cut trees in front of their home? I said, we absolutely would if we were going to encroach on your property, but we don't. We're clearing the right-of-way, and it's so difficult to ask every person, you get 90% of the people on the street that are saying, great, nice job, and you have that one person who says, I didn't want you to prune that tree, but the trees were taking the mirrors off our plow trucks when we went down the road. I shouldn't have to explain that to people. And when someone comes out and asks why, my men are instructed to explain the reason why they're there.
But Mike, I don't think we're trying
It
to.
limits things to a point where we can't get anything done.
And I don't think we want to second guess you on that. To me, I know how important it is, but that's more the minutia and your call.
I have emails from the supervisor and the town, some members of the town board that have stated to residents of this town that it is strictly under the purview of the highway department as to which roads get paved and what the treatments are. So I wonder how we differentiate that. And like
Well,
I said,
that's what I think we're trying
for
to-
openness, that's why we're here tonight.
Exactly, and that's what
I'm explaining
I'm-
the processes and the pitfalls of them, but when you allow hype to take precedence over scientific means that keep our roads safe. It's not my personal feeling as to how we take care of each individual road. It really is pretty scientific. And we apply those practices very carefully. And the consensus of some of the public is that if you're not blacktopping their road, you're doing them an injustice. Some of these processes are far better than blacktop. Right. Blacktop today is not what blacktop was 20 years ago. They use what they call RAP, reclaimed asphalt products up to 30%. So what they're doing is taking old junk and they're making new blacktop.
But I don't think we're arguing with you at all about this. I don't think we necessarily disagree. I think we want to get the information so that where we have, I mean, it would make your job easier too to say, look, the town board agrees with me on this. We're all together on this. We're not. I don't need to second guess you on microsurfacing versus, that's not my purview. I'm highway liaison, but I don't pretend to know about that. But I'm saying the more detailed we can get without going into, wherever you do your tree clearing, that's not, I don't think at all what this board is looking at. And NYSEG does that too. And I've met with people about it. But I'm saying if we just generally sit down and do a schedule and not pinning you down to dates, but this road we're going to do this way. I mean, I think that makes, then we're doing our due diligence and you're doing yours and we're working together. And I think us working together would be very helpful. So
I agree, but we need to make the decision soon because I've been under scrutiny of this town board for the last couple years. I presented a 284 agreement to this town board last year that was not signed to the best of my knowledge. And I get reminded, I have a folder full of things that have been sent to me, sample 284 agreements from other highway superintendents, and it all indicated that one thing, that you guys want a 284 agreement, that it's the law.
right.
And now that we're all on that basis, that it is the law and it is a requirement, I've presented them to you. There's been discussions about the years that we did not have one. If anyone or all of the town board members wish to readdress that, what did we do that year? Do we want to go backward? Do you want to sign 284 agreements for previous years? I'm not sure whether you do or not. I presented all of the work that we had done on those years to this town board at their request. Each and every road that we had paved, what the costs were, where the funds came from, what was recovered under extreme winter recovery, what was recovered under CHIPS funding. I've been very open with this board, but what is very critical right now is that I've got this request from this town board for a 284 agreement. I presented one in January. It has not been signed yet.
I think
It is
because
a
we would like more detail and information.
It is a requirement of the highway superintendent by law of New York State now that we discussed this. It was brought to my attention a couple of years ago. I've attempted for those 2 years to get a 284 agreement signed by this town board so that I can allocate funds and do work at the highway department. If this board doesn't want to sign a 284 agreement in some shape or form very soon, I can tell you that work will cease at the highway department because I don't have your authority to dispense those funds. You brought that to my attention, and I have stretched for the
There's
last...
two different budgets, Mike. You have your regular highway budget that you can do, tree work.
No, I
and
cannot. I
things
can't
like-
spend one dime of
The
that, Al.
1.4 that we're talking about is strictly for the 284 for the paving of the road.
That's absolutely untrue. And I brought this to this board last year, and our town attorney looked into it, and it is not true. I don't have a copy, I might have a copy of the highway law here, and it states...
It had all the roads you were
roads.
going to do,
And the-
which
and
had the 1.4 million
That's-
on it. And that's what we're talking about here right
No,
now.
the 284 agreement is an agreement between the town board and the highway superintendent to allocate funds. Funds from taxation of the taxes in this, that are generated from residents or taxpayers of this town, as well as state or federal funds that may come from anywhere else. Every dime that I spend down there has to have a 284 agreement. It is not,
No, that's not how I understand it, so.
It is, but
But
here's what I'm going to
I-
ask you to do. You've already volunteered to do that.
Yes.
Tomorrow, we'll go in to talk to Ron, ask him about the various, all we want to see is identify the $1.4 million, how it's to be spent. That's all we ask, and you can do that. So let's
Okay.
move on to the
We
next
can-
item.
Yeah, we can work on that, and I think it would be very helpful. So next.
we can work,
You-
and I've said this dozens of times at this podium, that 284 agreements are made to be modified as often as possible. That we could do it you and I spoke a couple of months ago, that one of the difficult things about saying the pie in the sky paving project for this year, if I can tell you in September, this road needs, but until we go through winter, I just watched 2 roads deteriorate this winter that are not on this list.
Right, and I don't think
that's
we
why
want
the
to, we don't
flex.
want to second guess you. I mean, we can put, I think the board just needs more detail, that's all. We're not saying that that's then written in stone. I think you and I, if we sit down and do this for this board, would just be very helpful, and then we can get it done immediately, really, and then move on.
Okay, basically, just what you said, this is a living document.
Right.
So there's no need to put a $1.4 million to
The
get
one
this
point-
going. You could put $400,000 and move along and increase it as the year goes on.
The 1.4 million is the monies that have been allocated to my budget for this year already. They're there for me to spend, and those were, those were the funds that you were thinking that I have the right to spend because they're in my budget.
And if we give permission to spend
But I
it,
don't
yeah.
have the right to spend them unless we have a 284 agreement.
And that's what we want more detail on. So you and I can work on this, get it together, and then this board can then sign it, because we'll understand, I mean, you can throw all the blame on me on this being highway liaison.
No, don't take the blame.
But no, I don't mind. I really
And-
want to
and-
get this cleared up so that we're working together, we all agree, we understand it could change because some road really did not winter well. I get that. But I think, and we know, because I think Meridian was going to be done and then it wasn't done, and there was never a complaint about that. So I think we can get this together, and I think
We
that's-
need to do it soon, that's all I
I
can tell
can
you.
do-
Because
I am-
on the insistence and at the information that was brought to me 2 years ago by the supervisor, that I need a 284 agreement. And I agreed with it at the time, and I provided information from the past, and I think that I probably have some correspondence that said, do you want to go back? And even as recently as this last email that I got from the supervisor,
But Mike, we just honestly, let's move forward on this.
Ask
I'm
me-
free
ask
tomorrow,
me-
I'm free next week. You tell me when, and I will meet with you,
okay,
and we can move
but it's
forward.
important to let you know that if you didn't get that email request to me for tonight's hearing, he requested all of the highway work that had been done on roads from 2018, 2017, 2016, 2015.
Well, we can work on all of that, and let's get this, I'm not worried about that. We want this 280.
Okay.
This
So-
agreement's important,
I
so
think we have a
let's-
couple other issues too, so
Right,
I'd be happy to do
So let's
that.
move on. You call me. I will I'm free most of next week. I'm free tomorrow. You call me. We'll sit down. Or you can give me, if it's easier for you, you can put a list together. I can ask you as a layman what's going on, and we'll get this all done.
And will you take some time to discuss with the other board members their concerns so we can have a conglomerate of all their
Of
concerns?
course, and I
That would
can't,
be, it would be
I can't
very
discuss it.
helpful if we could address it at
I
once, so.
I can't discuss it as a quorum, but individually I can poll everyone, and you guys can all get to me with any concerns you have, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Okay, let's go
All
on to
right,
the next item,
next.
e-waste.
I'd like to finish this was in addition to the funds that we've been talking about that are already allocated to me. There has been, we used a lot of salt, we had a lot of cold weather and a lot of ice this year. We have a lot of damage to more roads than I had anticipated. And I do have in my highway surplus fund an excess of money that I would address this board tonight to find out before it's a great deal of work to go out and survey and price roads and give you 3 or 4 or 5 different scenarios for repair of them. If there is a chance that this town board will release some of those funds, I can utilize as much of it as possible to do repairs necessary in town. Additionally, those funds, we are in need of a couple of new plow trucks with wings. We have trucks that we've purchased from the military that sit in our yard, and I would like to have them converted to usable trucks rather than just let them sit there and rust away.
Okay, before,
we'll
could you
need
just provide
proposal.
us with that
Yeah.
information? Identify what it is? We never just said no, just identify what you want to do and how much it's going to cost.
So if I give you build prices on this truck, you're going to guarantee me that you will
There's no
approve?
guarantee of anything. You just have to identify. You just can't come up and say, I want to do this, this, and this. We need to know what the dollar figure is.
What I just said was, I don't have time to perform futile tasks. If the town board will consider releasing some of the funds that I have in my highway reserve account, I will pursue. It said in the email that I sent to you that we have these vehicles available, and it's very time-consuming to go do truck builds. I'd be more than happy to do that if it can be done, if you're going to consider spending the money to have these vehicles
I
built.
think that's a yes. We would consider spending the money. Just
Okay.
come to us with whatever it is
Then I will
exactly that you want with an itemized bill. That's all, so to speak.
I will pursue that as
Estimates.
well. Okay.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Okay. Did you want to talk about
E-waste.
By the way,
E-waste.
one last thing, which was always done in the past by Jim Lawler, because I've been going to board meetings for years and years, and even Dick Palmer, is they did have, the town board used to have a schedule of replacements for trucks. So that is something ongoing, that if you wanted to do something like that, it helped the town because they could really budget. So that, not right now, there's too much to do, but that is something that could be done in the future.
I agree completely, yes. We can project that, and
Yes.
by utilizing these vehicles that we already have purchased, we can offset the purchase of new trucks at $200,000 to $250,000. each, that we
Right.
can get them built.
There was a
and
schedule and it was
utilize
helpful.
what we have. It'll be a far, far more economical way of doing this.
Okay, all right. Let's move on then to
Okay,
e-waste.
so
What-
as everyone knows, around December this year, the county sent the town an email that the e-waste program was being discontinued basically immediately. They gave us 2 weeks' notice, so January 1st, it actually ended, December 31st. Since then, we've had no e-waste. The county has been discussing with the Shared Services Committee, which I sit on, all the town supervisors do, different people are part of it. And what they're gonna do is what we actually have already started to do. Our town has sent out a request for pricing. The county provided us with 3, 4, 5 vendors. I went to, I think, 4 of them. They've all come back with a price. The county, in the meantime, sent out as a consortium that we would all join together. And we're gonna find out who can get the better price. Can the town do it better? Or can the county get a better price by having all the towns, commit to
Right.
a certain amount? Now, last year, our e-waste removal according to the county, was over $25,000. And that's quite a bit of money. So the bottom line is, we have to get the service back on. The most suitable spot, of course, is where it currently is, but not where it has access. I think we should try to work on some kind of proposal. I was thinking maybe start at the minimum of once a month, get a container. I think 2 part-time employees could handle it, maybe 3. But we as a town board work with the highway superintendent. Where on the property will it go? It should be, have a camera, it should be behind the gate, so they
Yes.
only have access to 1 day or 2 days, whenever it's gonna be open. So decide what hours of operation we wanna run it, how many employees we may need to start it, and if I mention how many days, in other words, start off with once a month to see what happens, and if we get overwhelmed once a month, maybe make it twice a month. Have it 1 day a week, notify the public what days they are,
Right.
and go accordingly.
Where would this be done?
Highway Department,
And whose employees would,
there'll be part-time employees hired by the town.
I
Well, make
think,
a recommendation, you can make a recommendation, say how you'd want to do it, and let us look at it.
I'm sorry?
You can make a recommendation how you would like to do it. We're just throwing something out for discussion, but we gotta move on it fast. We wanna get it in before June 1st, long before June 1st, hopefully.
Yeah, because it's been closed for, 3 months now, so,
Yeah, what are your
It's-
thoughts?
yeah.
Not now, I mean, he's hearing it for the first time, put
No,
together his thought.
I understand the e-waste is an interesting project, and there's many ways of looking at this, and I've had many discussions with people at the county level who've been running that program, and they haven't looked into most of the possibilities or the as to how that program should be run. The companies that pick these things up have been doing it at little or no cost for the last several years, and it's basically because they offset their costs of pickup by what they generate from the e-waste that they pick up. So everyone I've spoken to in the county at that level seems to be a little baffled as to how the whole program works. The county would not be opposed to having a pickup point, possibly one on the west side of the county, possibly one on the east side of the county, that probably in all cases should be manned, because I've watched this program for the last few years in my department, and it's quite a mess. So I have allowed to be dumped 24 hours a day, and what it really genuinely has done is it's taken a lot of litter off the roads. People will dump things there. They dump sofas and they dump barbecue grills, but I have found that at the times that they weren't, they were picking their favorite back roads that we have that are lower trafficked, and we would pick up 2-3 dump truck loads of debris off the road every week. So there's a bigger problem than just having one specific place for dumping in each town.
Well, no, that's not, look, I'll provide you with information tomorrow. The county has washed their hands of the e-waste program. They have issued a directive to each town, you're to be responsible for your own removal of e-waste. That's from the county direct. I'll get you a document tomorrow and provide it to you. It's our responsibility as of December 31st of this year.
Right. And I would be more than happy to share my findings, both from the people at Kuskowski, who's been picking this stuff up at my place for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, as long as that program has been in existence. And the discussion that I had with one of the executives there is we have many, many opportunities to utilize their company, whether their problem is that they're paying rental for the container that's down there and it costs them too much money. They're paying people to come and pick it up. They're paying people to sort it. They're getting a lot of garbage in it. So if we had an arrangement with them where we could give them the more suitable things, for example, a projection TV has virtually no value to them whatsoever, yet they weigh 150, 200 pounds. They're virtually junk. There are some companies that charge $150 per TV to pick up because they're useless. We as a town could dismantle them very carefully and give them the electronics, take the wood and general dumpsterize that. We could cut our e-waste program costs down dramatically with a little bit of good sense. And I have dealt with, or I have talked to other e-waste companies that will pick it up. Most of them generally agree that there could be programs here, whether it's individual towns or whether it's a single in the county or no matter where it is. One thing is for sure, it is an essential thing. I've got a pile of stuff down there now that was dumped outside the container when the container was full. We don't know what to do with it. And something has to be dealt with. It has to be...
But Mike, I think we're all on the same page. So we are looking for your recommendations, if you want, especially if you've done any homework already, that would be fantastic. Just write up anything that you feel could be done and should be done. And then, because we do want to help you, and it helps the town to get rid of anything that's there, but we need to do this as quickly as possible. So we are interested, if you can write up your recommendations and get them to us, that will be...
I received an email 2 days ago from Vintage Tech, which is a subsidiary of Kuskowski. They were looking to pick up the remaining e-waste that's in the container that my understanding is that this town paid $500 for them to come and pick up.
Correct.
They were paid, apparently, I had no knowledge of that until after the fact. When they came and picked up the material, I found out that this town paid $500 for that service.
That was a deal that was worked out by the county to pick up the
Right.
excess waste. 3 towns in the county had the problem. It was Carmel, I think Phillipstown, and the town southeast. The original price was $2,000 to pick up, which we would have had to pay.
That was $2,600.
I was told $2,000, and they settled on $500, and we agreed to the $500. They were picking up the container and anything that's in it.
Yeah, I know. I negotiated those fees with Lisa Neller from Vintage Tech.
Oh, so the county didn't do it like they told us?
They will agree that we were all in the loop trying to get rid of the e-waste for all of the towns that still had it. Right now, apparently, Carmel still has 3 boxes. The town of Southeast has 2. And the owners of the containers, some company, I think from New Jersey, wants their container back. So they won't take it with that waste in there. And we're down to, Vintage Tech sent me an email saying that they were looking to pick up the remaining e-waste Monday or Tuesday of this coming week. But I haven't gotten an answer back from them as to whether or not they want to get paid for that, or if that's going to be picked up on the original $500 that was paid. So once we find that out, we'll get the box emptied, and my department will assist in getting the container out of the mud and out of our yard. I will help them any way that I can, but I obviously didn't have any authority to make any payments or agreements with them as far as I sent that back to the county. Someone had to approve the payment. I told them that I could not approve the payment, but $2,800 or $2,600 was ridiculous since they've been picking up for all those years for free, and they did agree to reduce the charge to $500, and they only took part of it. If they had taken the whole container full, it would have been fine, but they didn't. So they will be gone, and something needs to be done, because my understanding is there is a state law that says that we are obligated to take e-waste. So
Well, we'll be working on that, and if you want to call me tomorrow, we'll figure out a time to work on the 284, and so that it's,
I will await your email
okay,
when we can sit and discuss that. And
okay, great. Thank you.
all set?
Yes,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is the regular meeting. Make a motion to go into the regular portion of the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, first one is a resolution, ARB recommendation, FWL Group LLC, 200 and 289 Fields Lane, tax map number 78.2-1N2. Now therefore be resolved that the town board hereby accepts and approves the report of the Architectural Review Board dated February 28, 2018, in connection with the application of FWO Group LLC, which seeks to construct a commercial building and associated accessory parking facility at 200 and 280 Fields Lane, tax map number ID 78.2-1N2, in the town of Southeast Putnam County, New York, a copy of which is annexed hereto and made part hereof, and that such report shall be incorporated in any final site plan subsequently reviewed and approved for this project by the planning board. So move for discussion.
I'll second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Number 2, it's a resolution settlement of a certiorari proceeding, Fortune Ridge Homeowners Association, tax map number 67.3-79.2. Now therefore be resolved that the town board of the town of Southeast does hereby accept the recommendations of its professional advisors and authorize the town attorney to execute stipulation of settlement, consent judgment, and/or order on consent in accordance with said recommendations for the following. Petitioner, Dean's Corner Water Corp., tax ID 67.3-79.2, year 2018, assessment $800,000, settled assessment $100. And be further resolved that the town attorney is hereby authorized and directed to execute any and all stipulations, consent orders, or other documents necessary to reflect the foregoing settlement. So move for discussion.
Second.
Discussion.
One amendment, that should be homeowners association, not the water corporation.
Yeah, that's, okay.
Okay, Tom,
That was one of our questions.
Where is it
mine.
at?
It's in the first resolve clause.
Yeah, that was the question I was gonna,
It's Fortune Ridge Homeowners Association. It's the right tax map number, just the wrong owner.
I know that we had, okay, is this open for discussion?
Yes.
Okay. This was, I think, proposed at the end of last year at one point, and we had questions about how it was being, why it was being reduced and how it was being reduced. Okay, so it's Dean's Corners Water Corp is not,
I was using a form, and
right,
Dean's Corners Water Corp was done last 2 weeks
last
ago.
one,
Right.
yeah, and the sewer
This
one.
is the homeowners association, which is the recreation
Right.
parcel,
Okay.
where their facility, their swim facility or their tennis facility is. the theory of reducing it down to $100, which is basically a nominal assessed value, is that because this is common-owned property, the value of that property should be included, and there's plenty of case law to support it, should be included in the value of each of the other lots that have the exclusive use of it. And there are about 103 lots within Fortune Ridge. They each will have a commensurate increase in their assessed value this year to incorporate the loss of value by bringing this lot down to zero, or nominal $100.
My question is, if they, and I know I've talked to Lori about this, and I'm sorry and she did have good explanations, but I was still confused, I think, or have been. So if you multiply out 103, each lot now will be assessed $100 more, is that correct, or more than that?
I have no idea.
Or is it 1,000? What?
Speak to the-
Sorry, Lori.
So if it was $800,000, we divide that by 103 lots.
Yeah.
It's like $7,700 a lot?
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the value of the easement of each lot that gives them the right to use that recreational parcel exclusively,
Right.
there's a value to that easement.
Okay, and so their assessed value is now increased, will be increased by that
Give or take,
that
right.
amount.
Correct.
And I think there are 19 homes there now, so they will have their assessments.
There was like 15 that were built for 2017, I think 2 more for 18.
Okay. And the unbuilt lots, will the or the developer have to pay?
It'll be reflected in the assessments.
in
Of
their
each one.
assessment?
Each lot, like Will said, there's 103 residential lots in the
Okay.
subdivision, regardless of whether or not they've been built out.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
And so, and regardless of how big the house, because they all have equal shares in the rec center, it doesn't matter if it's more acreage, less acreage, it's all going to be equally at the 70s.
It's not shares, but yes, it's a deeded easement
Right.
to each lot within the subdivision that has the exclusive right to use
Right, the rec
that
center.
recreational parcel.
Okay,
Yes.
great, that's very helpful.
I just want to say thank you. I spent like 20 minutes with you
Yeah.
last week,
It's fine.
so that I would
This does
understand
not
it
come up
tonight and just be
often.
able to vote yes. So
Right.
It does
thank
not
you.
come, and I thank you.
And
The
Will's
town attorney
explanation was very helpful as
Yeah.
well tonight. Thanks.
Spent a lot of time with me on this, so yes. It's-
Yeah, I know it's not common.
No.
We had spoken about it.
Let's
so-
hope Fortune Ridge type doesn't get approved again anytime soon.
Yeah, okay.
Is Fortune Ridge the only development that has a homeowners association with a rec center? That's
With a rec center, yes. You have Salmon's Hollow, which has a homeowner association, which is just for their road improvements
right. Okay.
and maintenance. And then you've got the last 2 phases in Fieldstone Pond, that's a homeowners association. You
Okay.
have the condominiums, and then you also have the 2 phases in the back that were built as an HOA. So they share that rec area with the clubhouse and the pool and the basketball court and the tennis court in common with the rest of the condo units. In that's an odd complex in terms of legal form of ownership.
And Blackberry is different?
Blackberry's different because it's a park district. It's somewhat similar, but it's a special district, park district, just for the residents within the Blackberry complex and the condos.
And the reason why it's a park district is because the developer abandoned
Yeah.
the recreational facilities years ago, and the town created the district in order to develop a funding mechanism so that the town took over the responsibility of a failed homeowners association.
Lori, I just have a quick question, and this may be a question for the school board, but when we do have settled assessments, I know this one's going to be a wash. We had talked about how they have a growth allowance in their tax cap calculation. When there's settlements, is that part of that calculation as well? Do you know, or?
I don't want to speak directly for the school board, but I do know that they carry at least 3 years' worth of escrows, for lack of a better description, specifically allocated to potential refunds, just like I do for the town. There's like a $25,000 a year line item, so that they've estimated the maximum they might ever have to pay based on, and I've had a firsthand conversation with one of the people at the board in charge of this, not the board, but in the district. They base their estimate potential maximum refund based on what the petitioner requests versus the current assessment. So 9 out of 10 social resettlements are a mere fraction of what they were looking for, but the school board has escrowed, put monies aside, anticipating the worst-case scenario, that they get what they're asking for. So they've got funds already allocated for situations like this.
Yeah,
Did that
okay.
answer your question?
It does, and this is no longer.
You were
for
asking specifically about the tax cap. I don't know
Yeah.
what they factor in, but if it's a standard budget item, I can't believe it's not included.
Yeah, I think the only gap there maybe, and this isn't for you, that there could be, that would be an ongoing impact, the increase of their tax calculation, and a escrow payment for a refund would be a one-time payment, but that.
Well, that's per parcel, but I mean, on an ongoing basis, we have assessment changes, there's assessment challenges, there's settlements, there's refunds, so they estimate on an ongoing basis, and I know that they keep like 2 or 3 years allocated in case there are multi-year settlements,
Okay.
which I try to avoid going forward, because back in 2010, there was like 8 to 10 years outstanding on some cases, and we've gotten it to the point where I have 2 cases left after tonight's for 2018 filings, and then anything new coming on will be after the new assessments come out for 2019. So I work really hard to try to keep that, so that we don't have, not us, nor the county or the school district has more than 1 year at a time that they're looking at refunds.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lord. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. Number 3 is a resolution statement of seeker findings, State Line Retail Center. Okay, it is a 21-page document. Page 1 through 14, half of 14 are the whereas clause, and the resolve clause run from page 14 to page 21.
I think, Tony, it might be, it's number 3 is only 4 pages, I think.
Say it again?
I think there's 2. No, item number 3 is only 4 pages, and then number 4
Wait,
is the one that's
so 2?
21, so
Oh, yeah.
we got to do 3 first.
No. Okay, that's an easier one. That's good. Okay, that's the one we're gonna read. Okay, okay, I'm jumping ahead here. Okay. So number 3, resolution statement of seeker, State Line Realty. Okay. Now therefore be resolved that the town of Southeast Town Board pursuant to the State Environmental Review Act and having reviewed the proposed project and changes in background conditions finds the finding statement issued by the Town of Southeast Planning Board on or about September 28, 2009, subject to all conditions therein, is hereby fixed and supplemental environmental impact statement pursuant to 617.9 A bracket, 7 bracket, is not required. So move for discussion.
Second.
Yeah, I just think you want to, I heard fixed, but I think is hereby affirmed is what it reads.
That was close.
Yeah, well, it began with an A, so, yes.
Yep, even with my glasses, I can't see it. Okay. We'll go as it's stated, not as
Yes.
stated.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and this is the long one, so it's, like I said, 21 pages. The whereases go from page 1 to 14, and then from 14 to 21 is resolve clause. Move it as a package on the resolve clause.
I'll second that.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Public comment.
Evening, Peter Bell. Tony, last week you had, or the last meeting, you had mentioned that one part of the budget that was not up to par was the court system.
Yes.
It just so happened that I was talking to a couple of friends of mine over the last week, and they have speeding tickets. Their speeding tickets, the actual court date is greater than a year from today. So I don't know how the courts cannot be getting their dollars in if their court calendars are so booked up that you have to wait a year to talk about a speeding ticket.
Well, the fact that it's only a year, they're in better shape than some towns, because some towns are 2 years. The bottom line is, the courts are not having as many sessions as they had in the past. The revenue's not really lost, it's kind of in the bank, except next year when I go to book the money, I just can't book it accordingly, I have to reduce it a bunch. The money's
So-
always in the bank.
So we're sort of accruing
Yeah.
that part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Between now, people move out of town, you're never gonna find them, but it's quite a wait. It used to be we used to be probably about 3 months behind, but now we're up to a year.
Yeah, I mean, I have never gotten a speeding ticket here, but I've heard that it was been 4 or 5 months, but when I heard it was over a year, and then you're saying that their income is down, I couldn't understand why.
No, and I'll admit, years and years ago, I got I went through a stop sign down in Bedford Hills, and I had a 2-year wait down there.
2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so this isn't, it is not like it used to be, but it isn't, believe it or not, it's not unusual.
Statistically, the town of Bedford is probably the most busy court in the state. For the reason that they're at the confluence of a number of state highways, and there's a very active state police presence. Southeast is not far behind, because we have the confluence of 2 interstate highways and the presence of a state police barracks here in Brewster, as well as the one in Fishkill that does 84. We also have the sheriff's department. So there are there's a lot of volume, and it's just a matter of getting that volume through the system.
Just a thought, would having court twice a week as opposed to once a week
We do have
increase
court
the
twice a
revenue?
week. Each judge has a court day. They don't always sit. It depends on what the judge's schedules are. But Judge Vercalone has a Tuesday court day every week. And Judge Fulchetti sits on Thursday, and he's there probably 2 to 3 days a month.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Wish we could do better.
Yeah.
Hi, just Kathy McBride. I just wanted to give somebody, I don't know who, remember that TV I told you about, that all the E stations are closed? Well, I got rid of my TV. I put it right on Tony Hayes' lawn.
Yeah, but
But anyway, no, I had called, I had, gone online and looked at some places and stuff, and Winter Brothers in Connecticut, Danbury. I had to drive it over there and took it out and everything, but I think that you can rent those bins here at a charge or whatever, or you can maybe, who wants this, can inform people,
well, we're
you
gonna,
know.
that's a we're gonna be working on it. We'll take it here.
But yeah,
all
bring
right,
it
I mean,
up, that would be
that
great.
might be good. I think that
Yeah.
they'll bring one of those bins here and stuff like that.
Thanks, that's great.
And
Well, we spoke of it earlier. We're gonna get something in
Yeah,
place,
well,
hopefully within 2
yeah.
months.
I didn't want to, it wasn't comment time, so I didn't
No,
want to say anything.
it's fine.
Okay?
Thank you.
So try not to use Tony's lawn next time, I guess,
I
okay?
know. I got rid of my TV, so I'm happy.
Okay.
Anyone else? Comment from the board?
Okay, I'm sorry. Someone else have a comment for a second?
Well, I'll make one quick one. We have a lot of false alarms with the fire departments, many, like last year, I think there was over 330 false alarms. The town has a code, we're gonna be enforcing it very soon. First time is a warning, and then the fines go up by the time you get to 4. I think the biggest offender had at least 12 false alarms. Now, a lot of people don't take this seriously, all of our volunteer firemen or volunteers. If they get a call when it's snowing, raining, sleeting, when you don't want to go out. I knew one particular person who thinks it's a joke when they get called out, oh, what are you worried about? They have to worry. They're speeding to the fire department to get into the vehicles, to go out and get the false alarms. So it's something the town, I know Michelle's working on, my office is working on it, the building department's working on it. They will start getting fines. We don't want the revenue. We'd rather you not call the fire department for a false alarm. Now, they don't do it, it's done electronically, so they have to monitor it themselves, but someone's gonna have to start paying. So 330 in a year's time was a bunch. I think so far this year we have about 50. and it's only 2 months. So we're in a higher level than we were going to be last year. But it's something that the town's going to start to enforce more efficiently, hopefully, and we got new programs that will help us, municipality and things of that nature. So if you have a false alarm, you get 1 false alarm, and after that, you start paying. Go.
Have a happy St. Patrick's Day coming up. And I talked to John Pilner. He works at the county, and he has been involved with the rail trail, county rail trail. And he told me that the section that goes over the Metro North Yard in Brewster and would connect with the rail trail that is at the bottom of Brewster Heights, that's set. There have been delays because of insurance with Metro North, but that's now scheduled for completion by January of 2020, January 1, 2020. So there's a section of the Maybrook line that goes from Lacey's to the Connecticut line, and that's going out to bid. And they're hopeful that that's going to be completed by January of 2021. And at the Danbury line, I think there's a park, and they're also planning to, I think, build or erect a parking area there for use. And the section that goes from Pump House Road up to Hopewell Junction, which is about 23 miles, that's being, that construction is being handled by Metro North, and that is projected to be completed by 2020. 23 miles, and they're going pretty hog wild on it right now. There's been a lot of tree work along the line. And there's one section that they still have to get funding for and also engineering for. It's the one that goes over, the trestle that goes over, it's near Brewster Honda now, it goes over the Croton River. And there's an abutment there that they found was cracked, and they have to do some engineering to get it replaced. Supposedly the bridge span is already has already been constructed and it's in place at the at one of the county facilities, but until they get that the support structure in a suitable condition, they can't do anything. So when you go up, Peaceable Hill Road is where you can get onto the section that goes up behind Kovackers. You can't go right there because that trestle is just unsafe. So hopefully in a couple of years we'll be able to ride from Connecticut all the way over to the Hudson River and beyond. So anyway.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
No, thank
Anyone else?
everyone else.
No comment.
Entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to close tonight's meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.